Hello and welcome to Crushing Comics. This is the comics review show from the Comic Crush. I'm Paul. This is Liz. We're going to try and do a quick show today for you. We know it's our first one back in a couple of weeks, but we'll just try and get through it as quickly as possible today. So sorry about that, guys. But lots of stuff happening at the moment outside of the Comic Crush, so got to get those things handled. But we are going to talk about X-Men Red, which I don't have my copy of sitting here and haven't read. I've got to be honest. X-Men Unread, I think, is what we're going to call it this week. We are going to talk about the Joneses, which I've got right there. The Ocean Will Take Us. We're going to try and do that as well. And West of Sundown, just there. And I am going to try and do a quick one on Spider-Punk, but we'll see if we've got time for that. Liz, why don't you try and tell us about X-Men Red, X-Men Unread? Because
read by me.
I didn't. Yeah, read by you, definitely. I didn't read it this week, I'm afraid. I skipped out on it just for sort of time restrictions and things. Is this kind of the start of this sort of next phase of X-Men?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, like in the last couple of weeks, we've had actually several really fantastic X-Men books coming out. Today, actually, or this week, actually, there was a couple. There was a new issue, one of Marauders as well, which I haven't read yet. But last week we had Immortal X-Men, which was brilliant, absolutely fantastic. That was Kieran Gillen.
Read, sorry.
Yeah, and we had X-Men Latitude, X-Men Unlimited Latitude, which is actually like it's the first issue of what is actually going to be like a digital comic, and on the Marvel app.
I understand you won't actually get the second issue of that, or you won't get the next one.
I don't know that they're actually printing the rest of it. I think it's sort of maybe. I hope so. I loved it.
It was a great issue.
It was so fun. I love issues like that where it's just this really basic, stripped back Wolverine story, just Wolverine being Wolverine. And I mean the vertical panels and that, that form of storytelling, really appealed to me. I think some of Declan Shalvey's best work. I thought it looked amazing. I just loved it. And I loved X-Men or Mortal X-Men as well. That was really great. And this week I really enjoyed X-Men Red. Cool. So this is Al Ewing. Let me just bring up the credits page here. Written by Al Ewing, which always appeals to me. I think he's so great. I just love his work. Stefano Caselli on the art. Federico Blee on colors, and VC's Ariana Mayer on letters. So it looks great. It's really, love the art. Don't know how familiar I am with Stefano Caselli, but I really love his work here.
Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff, quite a bit of his stuff, in fact, but like just across various books. Really good artist.
Really good, yeah.
As with like the entire kind of Italian school at the moment, there's so many great. In fact, Italian and Spanish school, as someone was pointing out on Twitter the other night, there are so many great artists coming out of those two countries. They're really kind of dominating the industry, the American industry, anyway.
Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, this book sees sort of Storm, Magneto, Sunspot, and a cast of other sort of known X-Men characters on the planet that is now referred to as Arakko, which was once Mars. Hence the X-Men Red. They've terraformed Mars and populated it with citizens, formerly of the island of Arakko. And Storm sits on this council, which is, basically the governing body there, and she is her sort of title is the Regent of Arakko, one of her numerous titles, but she's sort of almost like the queen of this planet. And she has some mixed feelings about that. She doesn't want to be, sort of referred to as Your Majesty and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having terrible problems with the light again this week. It's now that we've switched to this daytime schedule, now that the clocks have gone.
Yeah.
You actually get daylight in this room. It's horrible.
You gotta get a ring light, Paul.
I know. We're not going to afford it.
Right. And Magneto has sort of quit his position on the Quiet Council, which is the council on Krakoa. He things sort of blew up in all of their faces, during events of Inferno, and basically he's decided that he doesn't want to sit on that council anymore. He's basically feels defeated and has decided to kind of go sequester himself on Arakko, and do some soul searching. And then Sunspot, who is kind of our other lead character, has opened a bar there, and he's sort of this fun-loving character, but he's got conflict as well. He doesn't know if he really belongs there, or what exactly he wants to do. So it's got some character exploration. It's setting up the events that are going to take place there. And it's a cast of characters that I really like. They bring in Cable, they bring in Agent Brand, so a really good kind of roster for this book. So I definitely I'll be reading this, as it comes along, and
cool.
I'm just on a big X-Men tip at the moment. I'm really loving the X-Men.
You mentioned before, I'm like dipping in and out. I've never really been an X-Men fan, as we talked about many times, but I did love X-Men Unlimited Latitude last week. Got a big kick out of that. I think ultimately with these really big universes, I'm kind of happy just to dip in and out, and maybe read the occasional trade and stuff. I do have a few X-Men trades here unread that I may or may not get to at some point. But I'm more interested in characters. I really like Wolverine. And I'm more interested in things that will just follow a single character or a character or two. So yeah, I will try and give X-Men Red a read, though, since I do have it here. Anything in particular about the book that you really enjoyed, or?
I just really enjoyed it. It was a good little entry. As I said, I always love Al Ewing's storytelling, and I'm a big fan of that batch of characters, particularly Magneto. I'll always kind of go out of my way for stories with Magneto, and love Agent Brand whenever she pops up, so I'll be following that. But that is not the only superhero book we are talking about this week, even though we're mostly talking indies. The other one is one of the AWA Upshot books, which we both read, which is The Joneses.
Now, this, speaking of big universes, this does have a slightly kind of detracting thing going for it if you're not following what's going, which I'm not, and I don't think you are either. So there's been a kind of, AWA has its own universe, which is the Year Zero kind of universe. And out of that, they've managed to create these kind of quite soluble kind of mini series and things like that. So I think out of that, you've had things like telepaths, moths, and now this by Michael Morici, with art by Alessandro Vitti, colors by Ives Garino. I'm trying to search for the credit block, which has once again eluded me. Colors by Ives Garino and letters by Sal Cipriano. I have not jumped on any of that AWA universe. I try and get the first issues of a lot of the AWA books because they do some crime stuff. So I'm really kind of into that. And I usually like seeing if that's going to hold for me. and sometimes I end up collecting the whole series, and sometimes I don't. But this I really enjoyed. So the pitch is that there are these kind of people with powers that have risen out of a global pandemic that's decimated the world population.
Sound familiar?
Yeah. But what we're now encountering is a kind of movement against those people with powers, because obviously there's a lot of fear that they might be dangerous. And some of those people have chosen to become supervillains, and some have chosen to become superheroes. And this is the story of the Joneses, who have chosen to become superheroes.
Sort of.
Well,
some of them have
superheroes in disguise, and like there is a kind of family fracture. Some of them just kind of want to be left alone and kind of get on with their lives, and their powers. Some of their powers are proving uncontrollable, as we see with the mother in the opening book. I quite like this. I mean, I think like Michael Marucci does kind of list things like Hickman's Fantastic Four as an influence and stuff like that. And there's
Miracle Man.
Miracle Man. There's this. Sorry, go
on. There was another one. I can't remember what it was, but
but there's certainly a Fantastic Four vibe almost, or at least tangentially, in the fact that it's a family of four people. You know. Brother, sister, and the parents, which kind of has been done plenty of times. I think one of the things they bring to it is that they kind of integrate the family into what's going on in the everyday neighborhood societal element. So one of the big sequences, even though it's actually quite a quiet sequence, one of the big sequences is they go to a kind of a parents' evening where a lot of the parents are talking about these superpowered individuals, and they're talking basically about, you know, trying to ban them and stuff like that. And I quite liked that aspect of it. I don't feel there's anything in the book that you may not have seen in other books.
It's not reinventing the wheel, but it is. It's definitely. It feels like a fresh sort of take on what it's doing.
Completely. And I really like that about it. It also kind of has nice allegories with the rise of fascism, and of course what people feel is the sort of rebirth of fascism in modern society, at least in modern Western society. I kind of like that about it. I think you're going to get a lot more fiction like this over the coming years.
Yeah, you know, and as you mentioned, as much as you mentioned Fantastic Four, it's almost like the Fantastic Four and the X-Men combined in a way, because you know you've got the Reborns, who are essentially, you know, like the mutants. They're hated and feared, and people want to round them up, and you know.
But the thing I want to bring up about that, there is an element of comic creators. I think all comic creators, whether they acknowledge it or not, probably want to redo the books of their youth, you know. So, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No.
Because each successive generation brings something to it, and I do actually agree with the notion that I think if superheroes are real, it would be a freaking terrifying thing for people, and especially you know, the average schlub. So, you know, there is something in that. I think the paneling was quite nice in this. I quite liked the kind of storytelling and pace of it all. I liked VT's art. It's kind of a nice line. It's detailed, but there is that kind of, I think the coloring adds a really nice kind of sheen to it all. And you know, critically in today's comics world, it is clear. It's clear paneling. You can see exactly what's going on at every moment. and you're not given any kind of problems with the geography of it all. And I think that kind of is an issue in a lot of comics. And the dialogue also is completely clear. But I like this idea that kind of, as much as the kind of frightening superheroic element or powers element can rise up from within your own backyard, so can the seeds of fascism and the seeds of destruction and things like that. And you get a lot of action in the book. Like, it's very well paced, but you get like 3 action sequences in this, each one progressing and getting bigger as it goes. And I think, hats off to the team for doing a book that's that well structured and kind of and paced and things. So yeah, I really like that. I'd be curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. Strong first issue, definitely.
Anything else you want to add about it?
No, I think we've kind of summed it up. I did enjoy it, and I don't actually read lots of superhero things that aren't from the big 2. At least I'm sure there are, probably many exceptions to that, but at the same time, usually when I read indies, it's not a superhero based thing.
No. And I think a lot of the indies actually shy away from them. Or there has to be another element added. I mean, the kind of superhero stuff is kind of locked down by Marvel and DC, really.
Right. And there's other, it's certainly a genre that, like, other people want to, can kind of play with, other publishers, like, for example, something like Invincible, that does,
Radiant Black.
Right.
I mean, look, that's growing into a whole universe. I think it's interesting to see that this is kind of that with this sort of Year Zero universe, because I think that's what it's come from. They're choosing to do different styles of books with each thing, and I think that's an interesting approach. And I think as a I'd like to kind of go back and maybe take a look at them at some point in collections, but I just don't have the time right now. But at some point I will. And I think AWA are doing interesting books.
For sure.
Their first issues are always, quite exciting and quite interesting. But yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. Should we talk about West of Sundown?
Yes. Let's talk about that. I love this cover. I think it's. I don't know which cover you have, but
I've got exactly the same one.
Yeah, I think it's such a great cover. It caught my eye right on. I was doing the sub boxes at work, and I just saw this, and I was like, oh, that's going to be one I'm going to want to talk about.
Who did it? Who did the cover?
No.
Because I don't.
Oh yeah. I assume that it was the artist, series artist Jim Terry, because there is no other on the credits page I'm not seeing a cover credit, so I just took for
they had a few variants on this. Just first of all, we should say the book is written by Tim Seeley and Aaron Campbell. Surprised to see Aaron Campbell writing instead of drawing on this, because isn't Aaron Campbell the guy that drew Hellblazer with for Spurrier?
That actually sounds correct.
And he's had something else out recently, Suicide Squad Blaze, I think it was. Also with Spurrier. And drawn by Jim Terry, as you pointed out, coloured by Triona Farrell, and lettered by Crank.
Right. I wonder if it's his cover, actually. Looking at the style of it, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was Aaron Campbell. I just can't see anything the cover
in the credits. I mean, so we're back in the vampire arena again, and we probably will be in a few weeks, because Christian Ward's vampire book comes out.
Yeah, which I'll be excited to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like so look, I mean, vampire fiction, very storied, as we know. vampire westerns are rare, but not that rare. So, in fact, there is a movie called Sundown, I believe, which is about a town full of vampires, this is not. But that is a Western era set vampire movie, as I recall. There is, of course, the most famous one will be Near Dark, which is probably the best example of this sort of particular sort of subset of fiction. But that's a modern Western. So that's kind of set in the time it was made, which was the late
80s.
Yeah, 87, I believe it was. And it's a superb movie, and if none of you have seen it, or some of you have never seen it, go track that down.
It's great.
It is kind of tricky to find these days, but it is a freaking awesome movie. This is set during the Civil War, I believe. So we're in 1861, and we're dealing with a soldier who seems to have accidentally or otherwise murdered a child. Or murdered at very least a young boy, because obviously back then they would have been tasking even very young people to begin fighting. And he, do you know which side he fights for? Can you tell? Because I can't remember how the uniform.
I'm terrible with because
he doesn't have. I don't think
it looks like.
I don't think he's a Confederate soldier.
He might be. He might be a Confederate soldier. I think he probably is, but don't quote me.
No, okay. But
I'm not a war buff by any means.
He is an Irishman, and he, during his sort of grave digging exercise, he comes across a grave of a beautiful woman.
Well, yeah, and
she rises
with a bell at the side of the grave that starts ringing. So when he digs it up, yes, this beautiful woman climbs out and says, "Oh,
I've woken up at the wrong time, in the wrong." And so her name is Miss Constance de Abend. So one assumes she's Germanic in origin. Do you know what de Abend means?
No.
The evening. So,
right. There you go.
It's Constance the evening. It's a nice setup at the beginning. He kind of instantly kind of becomes enthralled to her. So it's a very traditionalist vampire story in that sense. I like the time jump when they're kind of running this sort of club and finding people who have done evil and basically just offing them and using them
using them as her
insulation.
Food source,
Yeah.
Well, and insulation. But so she, she's particular about who she feeds off, and it seems possibly at the insistence of Dooley, who becomes her sort of
familiar.
Familiar. And
there's some quite witty stuff in this.
There is.
I love. There's a line where Dooley talks about leaving this club, and he says, "I'm glad we left before the ball got too French." Meaning, I presume it then turns into some sort of orgy, and he kind of doesn't.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Around for that.
Yeah, he's just
this quite an innocent boy. Yeah.
Yeah, this good Catholic boy.
And we kind of we also get this thing where they're being hunted by people who Dooley just calls the hunters. And what happens is due to the hunters' kind of intervention, they have to run from the west coast over to the from the east coast to the west to California. And of course, California back then was kind of still Mexico, and you were dealing with that sort of kind of element to it. And Constance has to kind of repair her body because she's quite severely burned during this kind of scuffle that makes them leave New York. I like the feel of this, and it's interesting that it's set in Western times, and I kind of wonder if so. I mean, vampire fiction comes out of Europe and then out of really London or England at least, and the time that vampire fiction began is roughly the time when the American West was sort of reaching its kind of zenith. So I wonder if the reason why this time period is often melded into that genre is because those things were around at the same time.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And it's interesting that there's this kind of instinctive need to do that amongst creators, people who write fiction. I mean, Ram V did it differently. He did vampirism and colonialism, which worked really well in These Savage Shores. And in fact, I think that's the first and only time that's been done, to the best of my knowledge.
American Vampire dealt with the kind of Western.
Absolutely, yeah. It starts that way, and it actually goes through American history, right? I mean, it pops up at different times, and I think they got as far as the space race, and are now in the 70s for its sort of final kind of stages. It's interesting that these stories kind of never went away. I wonder why they never went away. Did you ever think about that? Like,
what? Just vampire
stories.
I think that vampire stories. It's because it's got all the ingredients. It's got horror and sort of romance and just kind of these like really powerful kind of tropes attached to it.
I mean, again, we talked about this a few weeks ago on a podcast where both of us are kind of quite literally suckers for vampire fiction. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, I was obsessed with that stuff, sort of from the time I was a teenager.
I still am. Like, I'll still dip in every now and then. And I'm always looking for something new, but there doesn't seem to be much new on it. However, this was really good. I really like this. I didn't really have any issues with this. I like the art. I think the
art's beautiful. I thought it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
It kind of, there were things about it that reminded me of Francavilla.
Yeah, and Guy Davis was another guy that came to mind with this. And certainly color-wise, I think you're kind of heading into that Francavilla kind
style,
of mold. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very good, and I certainly recommend it. There is a specific reason why she heads to California, which has to do with something that happens sort of midway through the book. But I don't want to reveal that here because I feel like it will give too much away from the story. But that thing does follow. That is also that kind of trope, if you like, can be found in Dracula. So again,
and there is a reference, a very overt reference to Dracula.
Yeah.
In here, I think she references the Count of where is it? Yeah,
Romania.
Yeah, the Count of Romania as the only vampire that's more powerful than she is.
And the thing with Dracula is, again, it's one of those things that always sticks around. And also, interestingly, for comics, every few years, someone will adapt Dracula. And I think last year, and going into this year, there have been 2 or 3 Dracula comic books. Again, never goes away. And I'm surprised that Marvel haven't kind of jumped on it and restarted Tomb of Dracula in some way. I remember reading a great Dracula story, which was not Sergeant Rock. It was Fury. I think it's like Howling Commandos, where they're in like Romania and they have to go up against Dracula. That was in Marvel Comics Presents, which I remember buying back issues of because it had Weapon X in. I was looking for the Weapon X issues, which is certainly something that I wish they'd kind of republish in a like a floppy trade. And that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I really like this.
I do too. Yeah, I really did. Very, very good, sort of take on the genre, and great art, beautiful cover, really, really fun.
Mm.
So
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm just going to fly through two more just quickly. I want to give this a shout out. The Ocean Will Take Us. This is by Rich Douek, whose work I really enjoy. I interviewed him once in the UK shortly before we left Orbital, funny enough. So this is The Ocean Will Take Us #1. Rich Douek writing, Carlos Oliveres on the art, Manuel Pupo as the colorist, and Dave Sharp doing the letters. You didn't get to take a look at this week.
I didn't.
It's a lot of fun. It's a very, like, it uses a very standard kind of setup, which is new kid comes to town. He wants to join the swimming team because he's a talented swimmer. He kind of gets, not bullied, but sort of shunted to one side because he's the new kid, and the existing swim team are seem to be a bunch of bullies. And he makes friends with a child that they're bullying, and also with a young woman who kind of is into horror stuff. Like, it's a mix of elements you've seen in a dozen things. But I don't mean that as a detraction, because I think that Rich Douek writing horror is kind of like it for me. Like, Sea of Sorrows was really good, which was a very dark horror book. And even darker than that was Road of Bones, which was one of my favorite books of the last few years. I really loved it. He also recently wrote a Superman story for Superman Red, White, and Blue, the DC kind of anthology title. He's great. Like, I really love Rich's stuff, and he's a really good guy. I always really enjoy when on the rare occasions I get to have conversations with him. I always really enjoy talking to him. Carlos Oliveres does the art. Looking at the art and the style and the colors, it is very much a YA book. There's a little bit of language in the book, so maybe older children. But this is very much in keeping with what Aftershock seem to be doing, which is they're launching their kind of own YA line. I don't think this is part of that, but you can kind of see that it's there to sort of usher that in almost in a way. But I really liked it. It's worth reading the back matter of this book as well, because that kind of all adds to what you read in the main book. It's all to do with kind of, something possibly quite horrific living in the waters, both in the school swimming pool and in the ocean surrounding this particular bay that they live in. I think that's really good, and I definitely big thumbs up for me this week.
Sounds good.
You should take a look at that. Spider-Punk, I thought was a lot of fun. Not familiar with the character. It's done in the art style is very distinctive. It's quite close to Daniel Warren Johnson stuff. That's definitely worth looking at. I just want to give you a quick rundown of the creators. Cody Ziegler is the writer. Justin Mason is the artist. Jim Charalampidis is the color artist. I probably mispronounced that, sorry. And Travis Lanham is the letterer. Again, not familiar. You read this character in Spider-Verse, right? You would.
Oh yeah, he pops up, in and I think as I was saying to you off air, I highly suspect that this is a character we might be able to see in the upcoming Spider-Verse movie.
Sure.
I feel like it'd be like a really good kind of entry into that. People really love the design of that character. It's I can totally see them bringing him into the movies.
And I like the fact that the idea that there's a kind of complete Marvel universe where this character is as well, because you get a not Captain America, but a Captain Anarchy. There's Riri Williams. There's a Hulk. They go up against Kraven the Hunter, or which is like a guy from a rival band. I quite like the pacing and fun of this. I think it will find its audience quite easily. I don't know anything about the creative team, I've got to be honest.
Cody Ziegler, I think, is a female wrestler.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think you mentioned that before. And again, I'm not
familiar with wrestling, but like some of the people I work with are big time, and we're really excited to see that name on there.
Excellent. But yeah, like it was a good, fun book. I really enjoyed it. I don't know. I mean, with Marvel stuff, I don't know sometimes if it's better to wait for the trade. I am preferring the Marvel miniseries. Like I said last week, I've just got through reading Kang the Conqueror as a mini, which was freaking awesome and one of the best comics I've read in the last few years. Like, I absolutely adore that.
You say that every week.
What?
You say that every week.
What, the Kang is the best?
Yeah, the Kangs. Yes, you've been banging on about Kang.
I cannot underrate that book or overrate that book. You guys have got to go read that book. I thought it was great, and I don't think it got enough due.
Well, you know,
it seemed to sell well because there was a scary moment there where I couldn't get the penultimate issue, and that was driving me mad. And I had to order it like a couple of times into Gosh because I ended up getting like the variant, and it was just like no.
We were selling out of it too.
Yeah. But Liz, read it. And
I did read it. It was great.
Right. Well then, there you go. I'm not wrong. It's a freaking good book.
It is.
Yeah. So I do advise you to take a look at that. Next week, I'll try not to mention Kang the Conqueror. But yeah, there you go. I got nothing else to add. We've sped through this one, Liz.
We've covered a lot of ground, actually. That's what, 5 books?
That wasn't bad. It was kind of, it's not as in depth as I would have liked to have gone on some of them.
But as you said, we both have lots of stuff on. So I'm pleased that we managed to talk about as many books as we did, and are able to recommend them because there was a lot of good stuff this week.
Yeah. Just a quick question for the audience. Would you prefer it if we just covered 1 or 2 books and went more in depth and really looked at the visuals and stuff like that? Or do you prefer when we're kind of a bit faster and we do like a few books? I'd love to hear from you guys on your thoughts on that. What type of show do you want to see? Because that really helps guide us, into how we make the content and stuff. Do check out the web store. Some of these will be available in the web store later on tonight. If you want to check that out and pick those up, and that helps me survive and keep going and keep doing this. There's also, if you want to know if you want to see more content, there's the Patreon. Like, take a look at that, and that lets you know how you can help us out and keep us going. Beyond that, got nothing else for you, really. Follow us on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Liz is also on Twitter. You can follow her. All the details will be in the description block there. And also do check out her website, lizcjordan.com.
You can pick up all of these fine comics at
yes, of course. I always forget.
At
Gosh
your
Comics in London.
Local, Gosh Comics in London. That's Entertainment in Worcester, Massachusetts, and any other fine purveyor of 4-letter, 4-color comics.
4-letter comics.
4-color comics.
4 letters for you.
That happens to be near you. Yeah, I know. If only. 4-letter X-Men. That's what I've got on the brain.
Right. Okay. It's been. I'm not going to say a pleasure, Liz, but
an experience.
It's the best I could have hoped for, really. Right, guys. We'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Twitter, Instagram, all that. Facebook. Find us, follow us, and we'll do our best to kind of entertain. Well, I will. Like, Liz just won't bother, quite frankly. She'll just be off doing something else, reading more crappy X-Men books.
Wonderful X-Men books.
So thanks for joining us, guys. We'll catch you next time on The Crush.
Bye.
Bye.